here, of course. Hello, everybody. Round 3, joined by the ever so lovely Sierra Dawn. Sierra, that was a feisty match that you and Rose had passed it over before. But we got more.
I like how you say feisty, like the entire match wasn't just like sleep turns and one of those games that like if I was playing, I'd be like super frustrated because my Pokemon won't wake up. But it was definitely a fun match. I'm hoping that we see a little less sport in this next one and a little bit more action.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, to be fair, P2 Terra fighting, being able to do shenanigans is definitely up on the bingo that I so happen to create, which I never created. It's just like, who would ever expect that? But we do have round 3. We've got the opponents, the players, sorry, which are going to be Slushy versus Young Elmer's Glue. So that is the name I just read out. Yes, great name as well. But we've got some good action on the way with the teams, to be fair.
Ooh, okay. So getting to see a little bit of the team. So we're gonna see a Bingus, but a lot of like the powerful things that when we've talked about Reg H that kind of paving the way. So you got to have we're gonna have a Raincore over on Kian's end. We get to see that Archaladon, super annoying in rain, super annoying in Reg H, super strong though as well. This Basky Legion, as well in or out of the rain, definitely a strong piece. And on the other end, the Dondozo, the feared thing to talk about for ever since Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out, but especially now in Reg H as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the Pokemon that just found its way from Regulation Set A all the way through to H once again. I mean, it's just really good for obvious reasons. But then again, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for you to be able to counter it. Now, on Kian's side, there is the Amoonguss. It does have Clear Smog. That could be a very big pivotal mon for this matchup. But wait, we've got the feed already. We're going straight into game 1. Both of our trainers 2-0. And we've got the Archaladon Pelipper versus the Dragonite and the Tatsugiri leads.
Okay, so not necessarily the most often you get to see the Tatsugiri out on the field without the Dondozo already having been dealt with and eliminated. So that one, I think, is quite cool. So this Tatsugiri offers a lot of pressure with its own moves, and with the Choice Scarf, is actually quite fast. So you do have ways to kind of try and slow down the other team. And I'm looking more so at something like a Draco Meteor that could instantly be putting a lot of pressure onto something like the Archaladon.
Yeah, 100%. And just being able to place yourself into the point where you can either threaten to switch in, switch out is a really nice spot to be in as well. But yeah, as we're talking about it right now, we've seen, I believe it's Icy Wind because the feed just cut from me. Came out accompanied by... You got me. You go. You got it.
Let me know when you get the feed. But Icy Wind, Archaladon to slow down. Stomping Tantrum brings it down to just below half. As it's not going to be any Wide Guard or anything from the Pelipper. That'll be some damage into the Tatsugiri. But the Draco Meteor follow-up into the Dragonite. Clean one-hit KO there. I was kind of expecting the ding-ding button for half a second. We need to get some funding for the Nino PokeBros Invitational so we can get these graphics. But that's going to be a swap now into this Golden Go on the other end.
Yeah, apologies, but we are back. I've got the feed as well. That was a very quick dealt first turn there, but we've got the board state now bringing in the Golden Go. Does mean there may be a potential of the Dondozo still lurking in the back, but I think wanting to be able to play those mind games to better position yourself against an Archaladon with lower HP is really what you're trying to look for, as the Pelipper is quite healthy still, though.
The Pelipper is healthy, but the Archaladon, since it did go with the Draco Meteor, it offers a lot less offensive pressure on this turn. If it is a Dondozo in the back, I feel like we have to start seeing that swap in sooner rather than later, because the Dondozo without its buddy Tatsugiri, when you've built out a team around that, quite intriguing. Instead, Protect on the Pelipper is another round of the Icy Wind, so the Archaladon gets lowered even more. And I'm looking to, sure, that's the stamina boost. That's the third one that it has. The defense is high, but it's not going to matter in face of this Golden Go. Shadow Ball into it will deal with this super hard-hitting rain Pokemon. But that, since it was at less HP, it does bring this time for something else. But get to see that Kian has the Incineroar and the Moongus in the back.
Yeah, and really nice Pokemon to be able to bring in towards the mid-game section. Incineroar does have the option of going for the fake out here onto the Tatsugiri, but more importantly, I think Yanelm is just trying to clean up the board state in order to bring that Dondozo unobstructed. And in this scenario, has to expect the Amoonguss in the back. But the Golden Go is Choice Specs. It is locked into Shadow Ball. So right now, it's probably going to stay on the field, try to go for the Pelipper, but there is always the option of switching the Dozo in.
Yeah, and that's something you have to be worried of at any point. Unless this is just a match where, you know, sometimes if you're staring down all these things to try and eliminate this Dondozo, because everyone wants to make sure in Reg H they have their Dondozo matchups, there is just the possibility that it is going to be something else in the back and not that Dondozo. So until we get the confirmation, which this kind of turn seems like it might be the confirmation more than any. Is this Tony the Dondozo? No! Okay, that's going to be the Palmet instead. So Dozo left at home. We're not friends with him anymore. Instead, the Palmet coming out onto the field. One of those tools that we saw back a little bit more in early Scarlet and Violet, remaking an appearance. This offers a lot of offensive pressure, and it does have the possibility as well of bringing a Pokemon back. So that is something, Revival Blessing. Hey, your Dragonite was dealt with. You can bring him back now that the Archaludon is gone.
Oh, yeah, you definitely can, as the Tatsugiri will be failed. But in a situation of what actually went through, it did enough to be able to clean up the board for this scenario. With that switch on of the Palmot, you've got the immediate offensive pressure of the Golden Go, no longer locked into Shadow Ball, but also close combat onto the Incineroar. So it's all of a sudden a really good spot to be able to play the mind game, either going, like you said, Sarah, for the Revival Blessing, bring in that Dragonite, which is banded for more offensive damage output later on, or you go for the immediate offense, because the Amoonguss is on the field. We know for a fact that it doesn't have Protect, so you're either going to have to force a Terra here or a switch out.
See, I'm just looking at, like, the freest Revival Blessing out there. And this Dragonite, that now that you're not facing down this Archaludon, I feel like you kind of click that. Especially, too, if you go for this offense and all of a sudden, like, you go for this close combat into the Incineroar, and that was the one that swapped, you would all of a sudden be set so far behind. The Incineroar's not swapping on the turn, though. That is going to be the Pelipper in for the other slot. It's Terrestrialization now in the match. It is be the Golden Go going into that Steel type. So I think there's offense on the horizon here, Costa.
Yeah, most definitely, as well as some revivals. As at this point, we're just going to have to see which Pokemon is going to be chosen here. Most likely it is going to be the Dragonite. There is the weird option of going for the Tatsugiri, just because Rain has been set up and you've got Draco Media Pressure. But Make It Rain, talking about Rain, has picked up the KO onto the Pelipper. Wow.
Pelipper thought that it was the one that was making it rain, but quickly finding out otherwise, this is going to be KO'd. That's going to be the knockoff into Golden Go and getting rid of the choice back. So the damage is going to be a lot less, especially now that you are at that -1. But since you did Terrestrialize, that's not going to be the more damage to the super effective hit into the Golden Go. That could have been a lot worse. And regardless, at this stage, there's another Pokemon in the back. There is absolutely no way to deal with it. So that's going to be the forfeit locked in. And for Terra, Elmer's Glue, whichever IGN they would prefer, that's going to be the first game in their favor.
Yeah, and what a way to go about it. Not bringing the Dondozo to a matchup where it isn't necessarily favorable to do so. So they did a really good job in being able to recognize that. Clear Smog Amoonguss, yeah, there's no Protect, because Kian or Slushy had opted to go for that Clear Smog. So it means that you don't have as much flexibility when it comes to its defensive capability, especially when you got to try to choose the Terra or the switch outs if there's that direct threat. And Choice Specs, Steel Terra, Golden Go is kind of a big threat, especially when accompanied by a Fake Out Pressure, Revival Blessing, as well as close combats into the Incineroar.
It's funny because looking at a lot of the different Pokemon that Ian has on his team, I look at the Make It Rain and I'm like, actually, does this really do the most pressure? But the Shadow Ball being able to deal with that Archaludon sooner rather than later, and then at that point just taking enough momentum because of all of the more supportive pieces in this Incineroar and this Amoonguss and stuff, the Make It Rain was exactly just what you needed. So I think you need a special attacker to be dealing with the Archaludon, considering the stamina boost can really get out of control
Yep.
sooner rather than later. It does have the Assault Vest, but I think I'd rather go up against that Assault Vest, especially if you're chipping away at it, than a
Mhm.
+3, +4 stamina boost.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, we did see it was DJ Grant that was brought back via the revival blessing, but I don't remember who DJ Grant is, unfortunately. It may have been the Dragonite, most
I
likely.
think it was the Dragonite that we saw for only a glimmer of a second.
Okay, that's fair. That checks out. So we're gonna have to see though, what both our trainers are gonna do in this game too. We do have Tony and Quadonka leading up, so a bit of a change. We got the Talonflame on one side of the field with Jan Elmer versus the same lead over on here inside that Pelipper and our Chaladon.
All right, bird versus bird. So that'll be a fun one. When I look at the Palma going up against this Pelipper as well, I'm just looking at the amount of damage it could do. The Pelipper's not going to appreciate that hit whatsoever. But also, the Talonflame doesn't necessarily appreciate the possibility of something like a, oh, what's that silly strong move that everyone talks about on why our Chaladon is busted again? You know, the
Yep.
+1 kind of delete something. So that's going to be a little tricky. The Archaladon, having gone for the Draco Meteor in the first turn of the last match, kind of really diminished that output a lot. But being able to freely go for the Electro Shot here, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. And I think something to also be aware of, sometimes we do see Pawmots running Volt Absorb, but in this case, Yanelm has opted to go for that natural cure in order to be able to switch out any status ailments that have been forced onto their side. But we do have a Terra Grass Archaladon to contend with.
All right, and that's going to be Protect for the Pelipper as well. So not really wanting to deal with the potential of a Double Shock over on the other end. Tailwind from this Talonflame to make sure that Young Elmer's going to be the fastest thing out there, as close combat into the Grass Terrestrialization going to be doing significantly less than if it was the other way around. That'll be the defense and the special defense drop for the Palmut, and the defense raise for the Archaladon. Electro Shot now. We got to wait for the little bridge to charge up here before firing off an attack into this Talonflame. And the Talonflame being the Covert Cloak and not something like the Focus Sash instead. The Sash over onto that partner Palmut means that is going to be a clean one-hit KO. But Young Elmer now has this chance to bring in a fresh attacker that now has this tailwind behind them.
Yeah, and it's going to be DJ Grant, so just about ready to go ahead and have potential with the Terra Flying option with the Terra Blast is really nice. Even if the Archaladon is at +1 right now, you are in a prime position because of the close combat dealing so much damage to be able to potentially pick up the KO there. And I do really like the terrestrialization of the Chaladon initially. You want to be able to forego a potential Oko from that close combat because you know you're picking up the KO onto the Talonflame, but this is why Young Elmer's position of being able to bring the Dragonite from the back is so crucial while still having that Terra option available for themselves.
Yeah, and it's a Dragonite that doesn't necessarily feel quite as pressured as it did in that first match. So that freshly grass terrestrialized Archaladon has to forego that boost and has to forego this match. Gonna be switching out to be bringing in this Incineroar instead. This Dragonite, unlike that last match, is going to be the inner focus. So this is going to be Intimidate. That does not matter for that Pokemon, though it will be mattering on its partner Palmut. It's terrestrialization for this Dragonite into this flying type. It is choice band, so the first move that it selects, they'll better like that one a lot. And there is the possibility of the Terra Flying. We have to get past this Double Shock, though, first. Straight into the Pelipper.
Yeah, straight into the Pelipper. Very nice anticipation there. Perhaps recognizing that Kian may likely go for that switch, completely ignoring the Chaladon, which was vulnerable with this double up into the Pelipper. But no, it's not going to be a double up, just bringing that Sash down and dealing so much damage onto the Incineroar. Definitely guaranteeing a two-shot there.
That was the nice thing about going for this Terra Flying Terra Blast as opposed to something like the Ice Spinner. Both would have been super effective into that Grass Terrestrialization Dart Chaladon. But since you went for the Terra Flying Terra Blast into the Incineroar instead, that Incineroar would not have minded the Ice Spinner. It does kind of mind that move a lot. And there is still the speed over onto Elmer's end. So something is not going to appreciate. I don't think either of these Pokemon is going to appreciate what's next.
Yeah, and I think at this point, you're probably primed to get a Revival Blessing off and just pick off one of either the Pelipper or the Incineroar. We know that Pelipper does have Protect, so Incineroar may be the likely slot of choice here to target if you're anticipating a bit of a defensive play here, but no Revival Blessing, actually. We have the Pawmort switching out for what seems to be the Dignan, which I'm waiting for confirmation, is the Golden Go, so wanting to anticipate that as well.
Chat, let us know what your favorite nickname is, because we have we have a lot going on over here. I like the swap though, a possibility to have a later revival blessing for something that you might prefer more than the Talonflame, and also just being able to keep Pokemon around considering the Weather Ball. It's a good amount of damage into the Golden Go, but it's not the damage that you need to be picking this up. We get to see the confirmation of what he and his swap for the second game, that Basque Legion. So that's going to be something that as this game goes on and things get KO'd, that once it does hit the field is going to be a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it does have Swift Swim, so you see either fluctuates between two sets, that being the Choice Banded Swift Swimmer, or the Choice Scarfed Adaptability sets, which both are equally powerful, but they just depend on the team build around them. So being able to capitalize off of this rain weather is super good, especially if there's any tailwind on the other side of the field. But the most important thing here is the fact that you're going to start stacking up those last respect boosts. You've got that as an option, but you do also have the Aqua Jet as a choice, which does pick off that Golden Go.
You gotta make sure you're getting rid of a big damage option. So the Golden Go is gone. Terra Blast, Terra Flying from the Dragonite yet again into the Basque Legion. It will be holding on. These Pokemon are definitely not getting Oko. They're just taking a lot of damage. Weather Ball, well, that will be the Oko. Critical hit will take this Dragonite down.
Yeah, and what a way to go about it, you know, foregoing your dragon typing, which would have allowed you to resist it, is sort of the give and takes, the cost effects of trying to terrestrialize your Pokemon dependent on your position on the board. At this point, you know, it's done and out of the count. Sure, there is Revival Blessing potential here, but the rain is still in effect, which means even though, you know, you've got the advantage of Fake Out, you're still not going to be able to do much else from this. So this looks like a bit of a wrap-up here of Game 1.
That was also what was nice about going for this Aqua Jet on the last turn. The Basque Legion, that's the choice band, so it is locked. But it's going to be locked into something that is a priority, so not even the option of going for anything else is going to be taking care of that final Pokemon. And that is going to be key in for the first game in the set.
And what a way to go about it. I think being able to pick off and understand the board position as best as possible there is, you know, what really pays dividends to be able to capitalize off of it. There is the Revival Blessing we were talking about, which could have been a main player in the affair. We didn't see it come into fruition as much in that Game 2, but we're going to have to see if it does with Game 3.
Well, I'm excited that we get a 3-game set in this, especially with how differently both of them played out, because it was light and day between both of those matches. I'm curious, and both players making adjustments going from each match. So sometimes if you win the first one, you don't necessarily make the adjustments going into Game 2, but Elmer with the adjustments of going for the speed with that Talonflame, and it not necessarily working out despite the amount of offensive pressure they were able to put in from the get-go. I'm intrigued if that's something that they want to be going ahead for in the second game, the third game. I can't count today. I was having issues with that earlier, Costa. Like, what is happening?
Don't worry, same here. I don't know. Sometimes they're a bit complicated, but sometimes they're so simple. I guess with that being said, we didn't see Dondozo being brought Game 1. We didn't see it in Game 2. Do you feel like there's any room for Game 3 for it to be brought here, Sierra?
I don't really know. I'm kind of eyeing up it's whether you think the Amoonguss is coming on out.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing I think you want to be doing is bringing the Dondozo and then bringing it into the answer on the other team. If you have then been like, hey, I'm not going to be bringing this either one of these matches, and then all of a sudden be able to force it out, I think that could be the option. I just don't know either, stacking into these Pokemon, if it's necessarily going to be doing the most. I don't think it could do more than like the super offensive pressures of something like Sarchalodon and this Basque good. So
Yeah, 100%. I think Dragonite was a really good reliance on that. I'm aware that there wasn't any Amoonguss in that game too, so we're gonna have to see if that has influenced Jan Elmer's decisions. But it doesn't seem to be the case. We've got the Pawmot still on the field. However, it is accompanied by a Golden Go versus what is now, instead of an Archaludon, that Basculegion, which does change up a bit of this affair, as it's no longer susceptible to fake outs and it can try to go for that immediate damage potential.
Yeah, and not just locked into something like the Aqua Jet potentially. Something like Wave Crash could be a lot of damage. So curious with what it wants to be locking into, because Wave Crash into these in rain coming from a Choice Band Basculegion. You don't have to be hitting into super effective hits. You can just be hitting into neutral, and this is going to be absolutely devastating. So definitely, I think a lot going to be riding on this very first turn of this match.
Yeah, we're going to have to see what the options are. Flip turn is a really good potential of just getting that immediate damage whilst being able to reposition your board state, as we are actually going to see the Golden Go being swapped out right now for what seems to be the Tatsugiri, which will be taking that damage of water types times full resisted. So really good switch in here.
I'm curious how much this will be doing, considering it's going to be the Terra Water Rain boosted Choice Fan Flip Turn. Considering that all the resists on the other side. Pelipper wants nothing of what's happening, though, considering there is the Electric-type Pokemon on the other end. I think that's going to be great. As Flip Turn, a chance to make sure that the damage that you're being done is going to be later, and that's not going to be much at all. It is just going to be that little chip away, but now you have the option of bringing in something else that can be dealing with the Tatsugiri just that little bit better. The Amoonguss is going to be the one that hits the field.
Yeah, and that's a really good sponge to be able to bring in to absorb all of that damage, as it is going to be the double shot. So there was a sort of a consideration that Jan Elm had to go through with the thoughts of, as you either go for the electric type move or the close combat if you're anticipating what the switch in is going to be. It could have been an Archaludon, you could have gone to close combat, but it would have been a bit of a stretch of a read to do. So double shock makes it safe. You do drop the electric typing right now, you're pure fighting, but the Amoonguss is in such a good position to just redirect all of that pressure. Whilst, on the other hand, we do have the Pelipper. It doesn't have Tailwind, however, it can try to go on the offensive.
Yeah, and we've gotten to see that even when there was the speed options for Elmer's, that it didn't necessarily outwin the match. So Pelipper not having the Tailwind, I think is going to be okay in this case. As we were talking about dropping a typing,
wow.
well, Costa, Terrestrialization coming on out wants to have a word with you.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for calling me out so swiftly as well. Icy Wind double connects onto the Pelipper and the Amoonguss, whilst it does leave this Thunder Shock now, or should I say Double Shock, available to pick off this Pelipper. No redirection on the field.
And that's going to be a Pelipper that is absolutely fried and gone. So that's going to be something that, yeah, like to be, but yet a little bit more. Amoonguss, it's going to do what it does best, and that is going to be putting a Pokemon to sleep. So the Tatsugiri is going to be sleeping for sure on the next turn, which is going to be nice, at least.
Yeah, it very much will be. And being able to terrestrialize back your typing is such a cool mechanic, which we don't commonly see, or we hadn't ever since Reggae matches that we had, because there were the very famous Dondozo, Pawmot archetypes that were going around. But what this allows you not only to capitalize off of the damage output increase, however, you're able to surprise factor your opponent. But Basculegion's on the field right now. We're talking about all of this immense damage potential, but it has the speed advantage via the Swift Swim. So what you're going to have to try to factor in right now is, do you have any safe switches, or do you just try to focus down on the Basculegion? You still have the Focus Sash available on that Pawmot, or are you anticipating any sort of flip turn mechanics, shenanigans coming into a play again?
That's the tough one, because if you do want to be locking into something that's a little bit more damage on this turn and it's not the flip turn, you could be stuck. We are going to see a swap. Graydon, we hadn't seen that name yet, so that one is going to be the Dondozo. So there is going to be the possibility of, yeah, because of the Sash, swapping in the next turn. I didn't get to see what the Amoonguss into, but that's going to be, if anything, all of a sudden a Dondozo that can then start getting the set up with the Tatsugiri coming on in next turn.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Kian didn't go for the Rage Powder means that they're wanting to at least rely on the resisted switch-in of this Archaludon. It'll be taking the double shock just fine. It's overwhelming physical bulk, now bolstered by a +1 in defense, really puts it in a good spot, at least against this Pawmot, which does get actually taken down via the Pollen Puff double up. Really nice way to be able to remove Revival Blessing potential from Yanelm's side.
Yeah, with bringing out the Dondozo, you can then force the Satu back in. So you will. Oh, it's not going to be yet. We're going to hold off on that. But you do have the option on this turn of either just attacking with this Golden Go, or to be bringing in the Tatsugiri. Anything that goes into the other slot won't do much, and you can be set off. I don't think the Dondozo is in necessarily the greatest of positions, considering how threatened it can be. And you also don't want to be then setting up to potentially just get clear smogged away. So that is going to be something that this is where kind of that little bit of a mind game comes on out.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with this switching of the Bastion Legion, being able to take this Shadow Ball for the favor of its partner Pokemon there. Draco Media will be targeting the Dondozo, dealing a 2-shot there, and because of Unaware, can guarantee a KO if it targets that slot yet again the following turn.
All right, the Musculation, that will be the double up to be taking care of this Pokemon. It's such a strong late game, but it's something that Elmer doesn't have to be worrying about any longer. With the fact that it was the Draco Meteor 2, that's going to be a lot less damage that our Archaludon could do going on forward.
Oh yeah, 100%. At least when it comes to anything that's not the Dondozo because of the Unaware mechanic and interaction. But you can still get additional Electro Boost going as long as the rain is still in effect. And Amoonguss has a really nice way to be able to side Pollen Puff its partner back up to health. So it's a bit of an interesting situation. We could see a clear Smog going to the Dondozo, anticipating the Tatsugiri switch in here, or just the side Pollen Puff. So we're going to have to see what they collect in with.
All right, that's going to be the swap into the Tatsugiri. What's nice about this, too, is making sure that this next hit, you are going to be good fast, as Commander is going to be raising all of these stats. Make sure you're going to be taking these hits a bit better. So I'm curious, then, with what this Amoonguss is going to be looking into and what it did, and what this Dondozo wants to do. That is going to be the Earthquake be hitting into it. Doesn't take care of the Archaludon, though. Going to be holding on just a little bit with this 15, but it's looking to be setting up that loss special attack. Make sure it has the options of dealing with the other Pokemon other than this Dondozo once the time gets back into it. It's going to be just so into the other slot.
Yeah, exactly. Pollen Puff wanting to just play a bit more safe from Kian's side, opting to go for the side Pollen Puff. Just because it's a bit risky if you go for Clear Smog into Dondozo, and it's just going to be a Protect that comes out, you lose a lot of momentum. Hence why Electroshot being able to guarantee more damage onto the Dondozo if there is a Commander switch out is really cool play as opposed to utilizing Draco Meteor once again, because at least you're hitting for super effective, double damage. But it sort of feels like a middle level play from Kian's side. Could have been a commit, but we're going to have to try to see how they fare against this Dondozo's output, because Earthquake is in such a prime position to essentially make Elmer run away with this game.
Love to see how much this Earthquake will do on this turn. The Archaludon, it's not going to be holding on. The Pollen Puff tried to make sure that it was going to be good, but no, it goes down. Amoonguss holds on, but at this point in the match, it's not really going to matter. It's trying, Casa. He's definitely trying. That's going to be the Spore. It's got its berry recovery, but for the final Pokemon, that is definitely a tough blow.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, is there any world this Amoonguss can bring it back? Like, multiple consecutive critical hit Pollen Puffs, but then you've got the Golden Go you got up against. There's no point. So yeah, that's what we see being translated on the field. We've got the winner of this round 3 being Yanelma's Glue in what was a triumphant Dondozo showing in that game 3 in particular.
I appreciate that you're a dreamer and you're a believer for the
Gotta be.
Amoonguss. I respect it. Amoonguss could do crazy things, but I think this would have been the craziest and a little too much. But that was again, like the game 1 and game 2, we already talked about how differently they played out. But then being able to see that Dondozo Tatsugiri coming on out in a game 3 And I think too, something that really could have been just either way, because if all of a sudden that wasn't the KO from the earthquake, I mean, I think that Dondozo would have been cooked.
Yeah, I think it definitely would have been, and it sort of pays a bit of testament to how you can condition your opponent, or let's say get conditioned by your opponent, depending on the outcome of game 1, game 2, etc. We saw game 2, there wasn't the Amoonguss that was brought from Kian's side, made Elma consider the Dondozo as a potential bring. It turned out to be quite nice for themselves, as long as they got rid of the Amoonguss, or at least they nullified the pressure from it, which they were able to do really well with that Terra Electric double shock Pawmot, which, you know, didn't only catch their opponents by surprise, definitely caught me, and picked up a really vital KO onto the Pelipop.
No, I love the double shock shenanigans though, because you hit it into the other Pokemon, then it's like, oh, okay, the electricity gone, and then it's like, psych, right, back around too.
Yeah, exactly. Oh god.
It is a fun one, but fun series, and there's going to be a lot more on the day. So we're going to be taking a quick break as we get the next match ready. But if you're sticking around, these matches have been awesome. We'll see you real soon.